Hello, Army. It's me, Taehyung. Today, I want to share something that happened not long ago, something that really surprised everyone, including myself. I remember walking into the press conference that day, feeling a little nervous, but also calm in a way I hadn't felt before. The cameras were flashing, reporters' voices bouncing off each other, questions flying left and right. My heart was beating faster than usual, but I knew I had to stay grounded and honest. You see, questions about my personal life always come up, but marriage, that was something different. I've always believed that when the right moment comes, everything will fall into place. But that day, someone asked me a question I never expected. Taehyung, are you ready to get married? Simple words, but it felt like the entire room stopped breathing. I glanced around at everyone, the reporters, my members in the back, the staff, and felt a wave of heat rush to my cheeks. Normally, I'd smile and make a joke, maybe shift the conversation to my music or my upcoming schedule. But this time, I wanted to be sincere. I took a deep breath and looked straight into the camera. I wanted the fans, the people who have supported me through every stage of my life, to understand me, not just the image they see on stage. And then I spoke. I told them exactly what I felt. I shared my thoughts on love, commitment, and the timing of life. I think what shocked everyone wasn't just my words, but the honesty behind them. In that moment, I felt free. Free from expectations, free from assumptions, free from the pressure to say what everyone wanted to hear. I realized that sometimes the most surprising thing you can do is just tell the truth. Even now, thinking back, I can feel the intensity of that room, the energy of people waiting for my answer, and the tiny moment of silence that followed my words. It was surreal. I could see the expressions on the reporters' faces, the slight widening of eyes, the barely there smiles. There was respect there, but also a little disbelief. And as the questions continue, I noticed something interesting. My answer didn't end the conversation, it changed it. People started asking different questions, deeper questions, questions about my life, my dreams, my values, not just about marriage or dating, but about me as a person. I want you to understand something, Army. This isn't about shocking anyone for the sake of attention. It's about honesty, about being true to yourself even when the world is watching. I've learned that in my career, in my relationships, in everything I do, the moments when I am real are the moments that matter most. So, when I shared my thoughts that day, it wasn't for headlines. It was for me, for you, for anyone who's ever wondered what it's like to stand in front of a crowd under bright lights and speak your heart without fear. After the press conference, I remember walking back to my waiting room, letting out a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My members greeted me, a little teasing, a little impressed, but mostly supportive. And that's when I felt it, this mix of relief and empowerment. I had faced a moment that many would shy away from, and I had owned it. I had been Taehyung, not just the singer, not just the idol, but the person behind it all. That's something I hope everyone watching can feel too, the courage to be yourself, even when the world expects something else. As I stepped out of the press room, the flashes of cameras still lingering behind me, I could feel the energy in the air had changed. It wasn't the same buzz of excitement or curiosity. It was different, more intense, more personal. People were talking, whispering, replaying my words in their minds. And even though I wasn't looking at their faces directly, I could feel the ripple effect of what I had just said. It was strange, almost surreal, to realize that a few sentences could spark so many thoughts, reactions, and, honestly, debates. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Messages from fans, my members, and even my close friends poured in. Some were full of surprise, some of admiration, and some even questioned if I was really serious. And the thing is, I was I've always believed that life isn't about following a script, it's about being honest, even if it makes people stop and think. That's why I answered the way I did. Because the truth doesn't always fit neatly into someone else's expectations, and yet it can create the strongest connection if you dare to share it. Walking through the hallway toward my waiting room, I couldn't help but reflect on my journey. The years of practice, the countless performances, the interviews, the endless scrutiny. Every stage, every camera, every question had prepared me for moments like this. But being asked about marriage, it wasn't something you could rehearse for. There's no script for honesty. There's no line that makes everyone happy. All you have is yourself and how much courage you have to stand behind your own words. Once I was in the quiet of the waiting room, away from the flashing lights and the crowded space, I finally allowed myself to breathe. I sat down, feeling the cool air from the vents brush against my skin, and thought about why that question had felt so intense. It wasn't about marriage itself, it was about expectation, about the way the world watches us and waits for the perfect answer, the perfect timeline, the perfect story. But life isn't perfect, and neither am I, and that's okay. I wanted people to understand that it's okay to take your time, to follow your own path, and to value yourself before you make life changing decisions. Even the members noticed it. Later, during a private moment, Jungkook nudged me playfully and said, "You really caught them off guard, Hyung." I laughed, but inside, I felt something deeper. The weight of public expectation isn't easy to carry, but sharing my honest thoughts lightened it at least a little. I realized then that honesty has power, not loud, dramatic power, but quiet, resonant power that touches people in ways that surprise you. Over the next few days, the press articles came out, headlines splashed across websites and social media. Taehyung shocks everyone with his marriage answer. Unexpected honesty from BTS's Taehyung. Idol speaks his heart about love and commitment. Reading them, I felt a strange mix of pride and humility. Pride because I had stayed true to myself in a moment that could have been so easy to avoid. Humility because I knew the world's reaction would be a mix of admiration, criticism, and endless curiosity. And that's okay too, because at the end of the day, I wasn't speaking to please everyone. I was speaking for me and maybe for anyone out there who's ever felt the pressure to meet expectations before they were ready. And Army, that's the part I love most. The messages from fans, the comments, the support, it was overwhelming. People were sharing their own experiences, their own thoughts on timing, love, and life. They were telling me that my honesty inspired them to think about their own paths, their own decisions, and that's more meaningful than anything I could perform on stage. It reminded me why I do this, not just the music, not just the fame, but to connect with people, to share pieces of my heart, to show that it's okay to be yourself even when the world watches. I've learned that life isn't about shocking people for the sake of attention, but sometimes honesty feels shocking simply because it's rare. And when you speak it from your heart, it has a ripple effect far beyond what you could imagine. That's what this moment at the press conference taught me, not just about marriage or timing, but about courage, authenticity, and the quiet strength that comes from embracing who you are, unapologetically. And even now, when I think back to that day, I can feel the energy, the tension, the connection with everyone watching, and I realize that sometimes the smallest moment can carry the biggest impact. The days after the press conference were intense, more intense than I had anticipated. My phone never stopped buzzing. The media coverage was everywhere: online articles, TV segments, social media threads, each interpreting my words in slightly different ways. Some headlines made me laugh, like Taehyung breaks the internet with one answer, and some made me sigh, like why Taehyung isn't ready to marry yet. I know people were curious, and I know they wanted a perfect, neatly packaged answer, but life doesn't always work like that. Life is messy, honest, and full of contradictions, just like us. I found myself scrolling through comments, reading messages from fans and strangers alike. Some were supportive, sending hearts and kind words, and some were judgmental, questioning why I wasn't following the so called timeline society expected. But the thing is, it didn't bother me the way it might have before. I've learned to listen, not react, to let the words float by without letting them sink in too deep. Not because I don't care, but because I know what my truth is, and I don't need anyone else's approval to stand by it. At the same time, I couldn't ignore the stress it brought. Being in the public eye means every choice, every word, every smile is dissected and analyzed. And suddenly, something as personal as marriage became a public conversation. I had to remind myself constantly: this is my life, my feelings, my timing. I don't owe anyone my rush, my schedule, or my decisions. That awareness became my shield against the pressure, my way of staying grounded amidst all the chaos. The other members were incredible, as always. During one long evening rehearsal, Jin Hyung noticed my quiet mood and pulled me aside. "Hyung, it's okay. You spoke your heart. That's all anyone can ask for." And he was right. I realized that the opinions of millions online are fleeting, but the people who truly matter, the ones who understand you and support you, those are the voices that count. Jimin chimed in jokingly: "You're going to cause another headline tomorrow. Just wait." And we all laughed. It was a relief to have those small, human moments in the middle of media frenzy. Then came the rumors. A few articles misinterpreted my words, suggesting that I had made some kind of commitment or statement that wasn't intended. At first, it was frustrating. Misunderstanding spreads faster than truth, especially online. But I had learned patience. I knew I couldn't control every narrative, but I could control my own honesty and my own integrity. That became my focus. Staying true to myself, rather than trying to correct every headline or comment. It was exhausting at times, but freeing in a way I hadn't expected. I spent a lot of time reflecting on what it all meant, about how people view idols, celebrities, or public figures as these untouchable, perfectly timed beings. But the truth is, we're human. We have our own timing, our own dreams, our own fears. Speaking about marriage wasn't about shocking anyone, it was about showing that it's okay to be human, even when millions of eyes are watching. And surprisingly, people responded to that. Some fans shared their own struggles with societal pressure. Some talked about relationships, love, and timing in their own lives. That's when I felt it, the connection beyond music, beyond performance, beyond fame. That was real, and it reminded me why I do what I do. One night, after a long day of interviews, I sat by the window of our dorm, looking out at the city lights. The noise of the streets below reminded me that life goes on, with or without headlines. I thought about all the people who had watched the press conference, who had felt something in my words, whether it was surprise, relief, or inspiration. And I felt a sense of responsibility, not the kind tied to fame, but the kind tied to honesty. If my words could encourage someone to pause, reflect, or be brave about their own choices, then it was worth it. Even amidst the scrutiny, there were quiet moments that meant everything. A message from a fan simply said, "Thank you for being honest. It made me feel less alone." Another said, "Your answer reminded me that it's okay to wait for the right time." Reading messages like these, I realized that the power of honesty isn't loud or aggressive. It's subtle, gentle, and far reaching. And that's what I wanted more than anything, to use my voice not just for music or fame, but to connect with hearts. By the end of that week, I had settled into a rhythm again. Media attention was still there, but it no longer consumed me. I had my own space, my own perspective, and my own understanding. I knew that every time I speak my truth, even if it surprises or shocks, it is still my choice, my story. And in that story, I found freedom, courage, and a deeper connection to the people who matter most. My honesty at the press conference wasn't just a moment, it became a reminder of why authenticity is powerful and why standing firm in who you are can inspire others, whether they're in the room with you or halfway across the world. The press conference didn't end after that one question, of course. Once the cameras were still rolling, the reporters had more questions, some expected, some personal, and some that caught me off guard. One journalist leaned forward, eyes curious, and asked, "So, Taehyung, if you meet someone you truly love, would you consider marriage sooner?" I paused for a moment, looking around at the sea of cameras and microphones. My instinct wasn't to give a rehearsed answer. My instinct was honesty. I think, I started carefully, that love is not something to rush. When it's right, when both people are ready, the timing will feel natural. I want my life to be filled with genuine moments, not forced schedules. That's what matters most to me. There was a silence and then a few nods, a few scribbles in notepads. I could see some people were expecting a bold headline or a controversial statement, but I wasn't here to satisfy curiosity. I was here to speak my truth. And somehow, in that moment, I felt a calmness I hadn't expected. The adrenaline faded, replaced with clarity. Other questions came about my career, about music, about future plans, and yes, about personal life. I answered what I could honestly, and then one reporter asked something that made me think deeply. Taehyung, do you ever feel pressured by the world to make life decisions earlier than you'd like? I nodded slowly. I do, I admitted. But I also believe that pressure is part of life, and it's how you handle it that defines you. You can either let it control you or let it teach you. I've learned to listen, to reflect, and to trust myself. Life isn't about rushing toward milestones because the world expects them. It's about living each day with intention and honesty. After the press conference, I found a quiet corner backstage. The room was dimly lit, filled with equipment and leftover energy from the event. I leaned back against a wall, closing my eyes for a moment. The reality of my words hitting the public started to sink in. I knew people would interpret them in many ways. Some would understand, some would judge, and some would be curious about what wasn't said. But I reminded myself again, my responsibility is not to control opinions, it's to live authentically. Reflecting on that, I thought about how much pressure we as public figures put on ourselves to be perfect, to act in a way that pleases everyone, to maintain an image that isn't always real. And I realized that by speaking honestly, even about something as personal as marriage, I was choosing authenticity over expectation. That choice was liberating, and I wanted others to feel that freedom too, in their own lives. There were moments later that day when I would check my phone and see messages from fans who had been at the conference, as well as fans streaming online. Some said they were inspired by my honesty, others said they were surprised but grateful. One message stood out. Your words made me feel like it's okay to take my own time, to make my own decisions. And that, more than anything, reminded me why speaking from the heart is so important. Music has always been my way of expressing emotions that are hard to put into words. But speaking at the press conference made me realize something. Sometimes words alone, spoken sincerely, can reach people in ways music might not. It's about connection, about humanity, about letting people know that behind the stage lights and performances, I am still Taehyung, a person with fears, hopes, and choices that are mine to make. That evening, back in our dorm, I reflected on how quickly life can change. One question, one answer can ripple through the world in an instant. But what matters is not the ripple itself, is how you ride it. You can either let it drown you or you can let it carry your message further than you imagined. I chose the latter. And as I sat there looking at messages from fans and comments on social media, I felt something profound. Even in a world full of noise and judgment, honesty resonates. Even when millions are watching, your truth has power. And sometimes that power isn't about fame or recognition. It's about inspiring someone to pause, reflect, and be brave for themselves. That's a responsibility I accept willingly, and it's a reminder of why I do what I do every single day. After the press conference, the energy didn't just fade, it lingered. Everywhere I went, people were talking, tweeting, sharing clips. I started seeing headlines like Taehyung's honest answer about marriage shocks fans, and at first I felt a mix of anxiety and amusement. Shocked? Maybe, but I wasn't trying to shock anyone. I was simply speaking my truth. Back in my room, I sat quietly on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor as memories of the day played over in my mind. I remembered the way the microphones seemed to multiply around me, the flash of cameras in every direction, the intensity of all those eyes looking for an answer that fit a story. And yet, despite all that pressure, I realized I had never felt more in control of myself. I reflected on the questions about marriage. On one hand, society, family, and fans all have expectations. On the other, there's a personal journey, one that cannot be rushed or dictated. I've always believed that love, like music, must be authentic. You cannot force it, you cannot schedule it, and I wanted people to understand that, not just my fans, but even myself sometimes. Scrolling through messages from fans, I felt a wave of warmth. So many of them shared personal stories. Someone waiting to find love, someone deciding to follow their dreams before marriage, someone feeling pressured by family. I realized that my words had sparked more than curiosity, they had sparked reflection, and in that reflection, people were finding comfort. That's when it hit me. My voice, my honesty could truly reach hearts. Later, during a break from practice, I confided in the other members. I told them how the questions had made me pause, think, and speak from my heart. Jimin, as always, listened carefully, nodding in understanding. He said, "It's brave, Hyung. Not everyone can be that honest, especially with so many watching." I smiled. Brave? I didn't feel brave at the time. I just felt human. Vulnerable, yes, but human. The next few days were a whirlwind. Interviews, fan meetings, social media reactions, it all blended together. But what stayed with me was a quiet sense of responsibility. The responsibility to be truthful, to stay authentic, and to recognize that even a small word, a small moment, can have a ripple effect far beyond what you can see. I thought about the young fans reading the headlines, the older fans contemplating their own lives, and I understood that every word I spoke carried weight. Not just as Taehyung the idol, but as Taehyung the person. One evening, as the sunset painted the dorm in a soft orange light, I sat by the window and looked out over the city. I thought about my family, my friends, and all the people who had supported me unconditionally. I thought about love, patience, and the journey of life, and I realized something important. It's okay to take your time, it's okay to wait, it's okay to let life unfold at its own pace. I also remembered my mother's words, the gentle advice she gave me years ago about life and love. Taehyung, there is no need to hurry. The right time will come, and when it does, it will feel natural. Those words echoed in my mind as I reflected on the conference. That's what I wanted to share, not just about me, but about life in general. Timing matters, intention matters, authenticity matters. The fans' reactions reminded me of something powerful. They weren't just reacting to me, they were connecting, reflecting, and questioning their own paths. I realized that being open about personal decisions, even small ones, can inspire others in ways you never imagined. And that's a lesson I carry forward, not only as an artist, but as a human being navigating this world with hope, honesty, and heart. That night, before going to sleep, I felt a quiet satisfaction, not from applause or recognition, but from the simple knowledge that I had stayed true to myself. I had faced the questions, faced the cameras, and most importantly, faced my own heart. And in doing so, I had discovered something profound. The courage to speak honestly, even when the world is watching, is the most liberating feeling of all. As I closed my eyes, I whispered a small promise to myself. I will continue to live authentically, speak sincerely, and embrace every step of my journey with honesty and love. That, I realized, is the essence of life, and maybe, just maybe, that's the answer everyone is really searching for. The days after the press conference felt different. The energy was still buzzing, but it had shifted into something more personal, more intimate. Fans weren't just reacting, they were reaching out, sharing their own stories, their struggles, and even their hopes. I started reading letters and messages sent through social media, some long, some short, all heartfelt. People were telling me how my words about marriage made them reflect on their own lives, on their relationships, and on the choices they were making. I never thought a simple answer could create such a ripple effect. But the truth is, that's the power of honesty. When you speak from your heart, it resonates. And I realized that this connection with fans, this unspoken bond, is one of the most meaningful parts of being who I am. It's not just about music or performances, it's about sharing life, emotions, and experiences. During rehearsals, I noticed it in the small moments too. When I smiled at the fans outside the studio or waved during live broadcasts, I could see that glimmer of understanding in their eyes. It wasn't just excitement, it was recognition. Recognition that we are all human, that we all face choices, uncertainties, and dreams, and that sometimes it's okay to be vulnerable. I also thought a lot about the other members and our journey together. Jin, for instance, shared a quiet conversation with me about family expectations and personal freedom. Jimin talked about his own thoughts on relationships and the pressure that comes with public attention. Listening to them, I realized that everyone, no matter their circumstances, carries a story. And sharing parts of that story, when done sincerely, can inspire courage in others. One afternoon, during a break between schedules, I decided to answer some questions directly on social media. I spoke candidly about timing, about patience, about embracing life's uncertainties. I didn't craft a perfect answer. I didn't need to. I just spoke honestly. The responses were overwhelming. Fans expressed gratitude, relief, and even admiration for the simplicity and honesty of my words. And in that moment, I understood something fundamental. Authenticity doesn't need embellishment, it only needs heart. I also started noticing how this honesty affected my own growth. By speaking openly, I was confronting my own fears and expectations. I realized I had been conditioned, like anyone else, to think that milestones must be met by certain ages, that love and marriage have a fixed timeline. But in letting go of that pressure, I felt freer, lighter, and more at peace with myself. The world didn't need to define my journey, my choices defined it. In quiet moments, I would think about the future, not just about marriage or relationships, but about the life I wanted to lead, the person I wanted to become. And I discovered that embracing patience, being true to my feelings, and respecting my own timing were as important as any career achievement or public recognition. It was a lesson in self respect, in honoring one's own heart, and in understanding that life's beauty often lies in its unpredictability. And yet, I knew this honesty came with responsibility. Every word I said, every thought I shared would influence those who looked up to me. So I became more mindful, not cautious, but thoughtful. I wanted to speak with intention, to inspire without imposing, to guide without dictating. This responsibility didn't feel heavy, it felt meaningful. Later, during a fan meeting, I had a moment that I'll never forget. A fan approached me and said, Oppa, your answer made me feel okay about taking my time to find love. I was scared, I was behind, but now I understand it's okay to wait. I was speechless for a moment, then nodded with a soft smile. I realized that this this exchange of trust, empathy, and shared humanity was what truly mattered. Not headlines, not fame, not applause, just connection. I began to reflect on the bigger picture, how we all navigate life, how we all face expectations, and how honesty, simple, heartfelt honesty, can create moments of understanding that ripple far beyond ourselves. In my own life, it was freeing. In the lives of others, it was comforting. And I felt an indescribable gratitude for being in a position where I could influence even a tiny part of someone's journey positively. As the days turned into weeks, the lesson became clear. Life isn't about rushing milestones or conforming to expectations. It's about listening to your own heart, respecting your own journey, and embracing the unpredictable beauty of each moment. And when you share that journey authentically, you invite others to do the same. So I made a quiet promise to myself and to my fans to remain sincere, to continue speaking from the heart, and to honor the journey of life, love, and growth, one honest word at a time. Because in the end, that honesty is what truly connects us. That honesty is what inspires courage, and that honesty is what creates the moments that matter most. Now, as I sit here reflecting on everything that has happened since that press conference, I feel a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the support, but for the connection that we've built together. Every question asked, every reaction, every message I've received, it's all part of this incredible journey we share. Being open about my thoughts on marriage wasn't easy at first. I felt the weight of expectations, the curiosity, and even the judgment that can come with being in the public eye. But in that moment, I realized something important. Honesty is not only about speaking the truth, it's about trusting yourself and trusting the people who truly care about you. I want you all to know that when I answered that question, I wasn't trying to make headlines or shock anyone for attention. I simply spoke from my heart. And speaking from the heart isn't always easy. It's vulnerable, it can be misunderstood, and it can even feel exposing. But it's also the most liberating thing you can do. Because when you allow yourself to be honest, you invite others to be honest with themselves too. And that's what I've seen happen with you, my fans. I also want to express my deep appreciation to my family, my fellow members, and everyone who has supported me silently behind the scenes. They reminded me that love, care, and understanding come in many forms, not just romantic love, but the love that surrounds us every day. And that support has allowed me to speak freely, to grow, and to continue learning about myself and the world around me. Thank you for walking this journey with me, for listening, for understanding, and for allowing me to be myself. Your support doesn't just uplift me, it inspires me to be better, to care deeper, and to share openly. And I hope that as we continue forward together, we can keep embracing honesty, kindness, and connection in every step we take. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you for believing in me, for sharing in my experiences, and for being part of this incredible journey. Every smile, every message, every moment of understanding, it matters more than you can imagine. And I will continue to cherish it, just as I cherish all of you. Because at the end of the day, life isn't about rushing to the next milestone or worrying about expectations. It's about living authentically, loving genuinely, and connecting with those who matter most. And that is the message I hope stays with you long after this moment. Thank you always for being with me on this journey, for trusting me, and for letting me share a piece of my heart with you.